I don't really need to tell you how important backgrounds are, but I do need to tell you, I think, how backgrounds can contribute to a story and how easily they can actually spoil a story. There's some rules about backgrounds. If you're using a wide-angle lens, then generally speaking, your backgrounds are going to be, you're going to see more information. They are likely to be in focus or less out of focus as they might be if using a long focused lens. Here are two examples. Now, as you can see, the one that is where the subject is very close to the camera, the aperture has been opened to narrow the depth of field or the depth of focus, therefore throwing the background out of focus, and gives a very pleasing look to the image. Here's a similar image taken with also a very wide-angle lens where the shutter has been closed down and both the foreground and the background are in focus. Now, in the video in this course about lenses and perspective, you'll understand how that affects the background. In this example, in the desert, interviewing, doing a formal interview, and we set it up with a background that would be relevant to the story. We were in the Namib desert. And then see what happens.
And then at night, the clear skies, the astronomy that you get, it is absolutely majestic to see this landscape.
A woman passes through the background and could have completely spoiled that part of the interview. But because the background was so out of focus, and because the movement in the background was not completely incongruous, she was obviously a local person living in the local area, so she wasn't out of context. Now, if that had been something completely out of context, maybe a car driving by, because we were talking about the wilderness, the story was the wilderness. If it had been something very contrary to the story, it would have ruined it. If the background had been in focus, sharply in focus, even with this interview, and the background movement would have been as apparent as it is, but in focus, it would have spoiled the shot. Because there's no ways that viewers' eyes wouldn't have been drawn to it. They are a bit as it happened. But because it was subtle-ish, it didn't affect the viewer's experience of listening to the words of the interview and seeing the scene. Let's now look at some other backgrounds and how they affect the storytelling. This is Great Zimbabwe, and I think very appropriately bringing you the next series of four-wheel drive from the country. This, I think, is an example of a lovely background to a presentation directly to camera. I have set up the scene. This is the Great Wall, the ruins, the Great Wall of Zimbabwe, and I'm about to do a story about a little bit of history of the country of Zimbabwe and then do a travelogue through Zimbabwe. Great way of opening a show, lovely images, lovely texture, and of course the background here. What's good about the background here is the wall that I am sitting on or leaning against is in focus. The wall is part of the ruins. It's very much relevant to what we've just seen. It's more of what we've just seen. It's more of this lovely rock, and this lovely formation, this lovely texture. And yet the background is out of focus, and no matter what happened in the background, it would be interesting because it would be completely out of focus, and if there was movement in the background, that would actually be quite nice because it would be so far away, but it would express life and movement, and imagine animals moving in the background, or a cattle herder, or even a bus with bicycles would be nice in the background because they would be completely out of focus, but they would be so much part of the story. I think this one works really well. Coke, so the idea of paying $1 million for a Coke. Here is the next scene, continuing my presentation to camera. Which one do you think is the most interesting? But more importantly, which one do you think is more visually appealing and gives the audience more information without detracting from the words being spoken? I think the first one. I think the first one is a much, much nicer image. So if I was going to run a long presentation to camera, the first one would be my first choice. But having both is nice, because having a long presentation to camera without a change of background, without a change of situation, can be a bit tedious. Try and change it. It's just good storytelling. Most television presenters, they sit in their chair and they present to camera. They have behind them a beautiful green screen onto which the producer pastes some photograph of some nice place in the world. With this one, I decided to actually make the background a part of the story. It was such a beautiful background. It was this plain, this African plain. And I was kind of sitting, and there behind me was this, it was gorgeous. Itself was worthy of, there was nothing really happening on the plain. It was static, but it was just so beautiful. And because the show had a very informal approach to presentation, I decided to actually make the background, turn it into a character. Well, I can't afford such extravagances, so live, Ruanga National Park. Hang on a minute. That's an elephant. It is too. Oh, sorry. I was supposed to announce the program. Yes, today we're testing the Toyota Land Cruiser FJ. The truth is that I had photographed the elephant half an hour earlier. We were there, we were setting up, thinking about what we were going to do, and there I saw an elephant. I had a long focus lens and got the shot of the elephant. And then it actually came to me while presenting to camera. I hadn't rehearsed it at all. I hadn't even really thought about it. But as I was presenting to camera, little thing in my head said, that background needs to be, we need to say something about it. And so I think it's quirky. You might think it's very informal. Now, to do that in a show that was very formal, it would just be seen as silly. But I think it's quirky and works quite nicely. More about backgrounds. This might be a difficult one to teach, because I'm going to go through some of my old programming and try and find some bad ones, some ones where they were just poor. Now, the first one I found is this one, interview about it was a world record attempt of vehicles, Land Rovers, and the organizer needed a quick interview. Look at the background. Look at between the two of us, there's an aluminium pole and some string. The background is completely nondescript. This is how not to do an interview. You've got to make your background relevant to the story, not like this.
To say she's still working, but
this one is not terrible, but it's really not great, is it? The challenge was, the story was about a workshop that was modifying vehicles and accessories for vehicles, and it was a very, very noisy workshop. So filming it in the workshop during working hours wasn't possible because of the sound. So we went into their kind of waiting room, and the orange couch is disturbing. It's a horrible color. The light was very low. The light was poor. So we had to deal with that. I didn't have lights with me. It was a compromised situation. But you can see by this, though, that a poor background in a situation like this, really, the whole thing is brought down by a mediocre background. Let's now look at some backgrounds that really have worked out very well indeed.
Well, look at it. So remote. Having a small group of friends and family.
Suspension, including shocks and springs. Terrible taste. They should have a big label on it.
I can do the stallion and the foal.
And to me, it epitomizes the wonder of traveling in Namibia. The designated camping spot. Today, this morning, as the sun comes up, we're going to go now and have a last look at... People have a love-hate relationship with this. Paying attention to your backgrounds is really worth it. All these extracts have been taken from a television series that I produced in 2012. It was my 4th adventure travel TV series. I am pleased to say it was a lot easier to find the good backgrounds than it was to find the bad backgrounds, and hopefully my work has got a little bit better.